What's up, and welcome to another episode of the Grind Line Podcast. You're listening to episode 236. I am here tonight with Ryan. We are going to do some roster war projections. But how are you doing tonight, Ryan? Yeah, well, boy's right, because it's getting, people are getting angry online about it already. But how are you?
I'll ask why here in a minute, but I'm good. Softball season has officially come to an end. Well, let me say the spring-summer season has officially come to an end. I was down in Columbus and from Wednesday to Sunday playing down there at a World Series. It was a good time. Got a lot of sun and a lot of alcohol on top of some 10-year-old softball. It was good times.
Did they win?
They finished in the top 8 out of 60.
Well, that's good. That's really high up there. It's a proud dad moment, right?
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, we lost in that'd be the quarters to the eventual team that ended up winning it all. So
I'm
sorry, they lost in the championship. They lost in the championship.
You still take that
errors,
loss,
and they lost it.
Oh, that's a shit way to lose. So I am drinking, and in case you haven't had it yet, Old Nation has a new one called World Tart Strawberry Rhubarb, and it is phenomenal. It is so good. But to answer your question about why people are mad about predictions. They don't like them. They think they're stupid. If their team is not great in them, they think the prediction is stupid and that it's not really worth anything, and they laugh it off. But what we're going to do tonight is we're going to talk about it, because we had mentioned it on a previous episode, the Jfresh WAR roster builder. We were begging him to release it. He finally released the beta of it. Some people are missing their team logo and stuff, but that doesn't matter. That doesn't affect anything.
It happens all the time.
Sure, people just miss their logos. But I have pulled all the teams in our division. We're going to go over them one by one, kind of figure out if we think it's a little high or a little low as far as the projection goes. And I think Jfresh himself had said that the closest projection last year was still off by 8 points or something like that. And not just his projections, just every projection made of the major outlets that do projections were off by 8 points.
And I mean, you look at these are all best case scenario. No one's getting hurt. Your top players are there. It's like an NHL 23 roster where you turn the injuries off.
Yeah, it's like if we would have had all of our players healthy playing for the entire year, we were projected at 100 points last year or something. And then we lost Robbie Fabry. We lost Bertuzzi for a long time. We lost Vrana the entire season. So this is all best case pie in the sky scenarios that it's things you dream of, but it's the same case for every team. That's what it is. It's not just if all of our people are healthy. It is also if all the Bruins are healthy, if all the Maple Leafs are healthy, if all the Sens are healthy. It doesn't happen. It never happens. So take these with a grain of salt, just that injuries happen. Guys do overperform, guys underperform. So it'll go back and forth. And if you're watching on YouTube, and if you're not, you should be, we have a fancy new layout that will show you what we're looking at on the screen. It'll show you the projected WAR of each line, the offensive and defensive WAR of each line. And you'll be able to see all that fun stuff. I put the topics up. It's going to be a great time. So
is it going to have the description of what it is that WAR means and things of that nature by chance?
It can, Ryan. I can make all your dreams come true. So I can put up the Jfresh. Jfresh does a kind of explainer of his cards and what the stuff means. So I can put up the little explainer underneath the WAR chart
that'd be huge.
Of what it means. I will do that.
Sweet.
Just for you, the listener. I will do that. So we're going to start off with the Red Wings. And I took these lines, not the Red Wings lines, but all the other ones, I took straight from Daily Faceoff. So Daily Faceoff updated their lines the 31st of July on what they predict the lines for the team to be. I changed ours. I don't like what Daily Faceoff had our lines as. It wasn't super balanced. I changed it and actually upped our points by a little bit. So we're going to start top line of Alex DeBrincat, Dylan Larkin, David Perron. That line has a projected WAR of 5.5, an offensive 5, a defensive -0.2. Not too worried about things that are slightly below. Second line of Andrew Kopp, JT Compher, Lucas Raymond. That line has a projected WAR of 2 with an offensive 1.6 and a defensive -0.1. A third line of Klim Kostin, Michael Rasmussen, and Daniel Sprong with a projected WAR of 3.3 and an offensive 3.3, defensive -0.2. and a fourth line of Christian Fischer, Robbie Fabry, Jonathan Berggren, with a projected WAR of 0.2, offense 0.4, defense negative 0.3, for a total forward WAR of 11, meaning wins above replacement for the forwards at 11. Our defense, top pair of Jake Wallman and Moritz Seider with a projected WAR of 3.1. Shayne Gostisbehere and Justin Holl as the second pair with a projected WAR of 1.2. Olli Mata and Ben Sherratt as the third pair with a projected WAR of -1. If you put
Ben Sherratt like a -12.
If you put Gustav Lindstrom in there instead of Ben Sherratt, it goes up.
Does it really?
If you take Ben Sherratt out and you reshuffle it the way I would when Edvinsson comes in, where it's Wallman, Seider, Edvinsson, Ghost, Mata, and Holl, it goes up even more. So Ben Sherratt is literally the anchor weighing down everything there. But the defense has a positive WAR of 3.3.
You gained 3 points in an almost full point on defense WAR.
See, I told you. It's the Ben Sherratt effect. But as it stands right now, and where I have the pairings, the defensive WAR is a 3.3, which is much better than it was last season. And then Ville Husso gets a projected WAR of 1.1. James Reimer gets a 1.1 for a goalie WAR of 2.2. The thing I don't like about it is it says that our power play's WAR is 4.6, which is good. That's a solid power play. It says the PK is a -0.6. I don't agree with that because I feel like we picked up a lot of people who are more defensively responsible, especially in a penalty killer like Christian Fischer.
Maybe it's because like a Sprong and a DeBrincat weigh
But I wouldn't put them
more
on the PK.
Right. I'm just saying, but it's looking at cumulative. It's not looking at particular people on the PK. So those that are shitty defensively are going to drag that down a lot.
Sure, because it doesn't let you pick your power play and it doesn't let you pick your penalty kill. So Jfresh, if you're listening, make that happen. Let's get a special teams war builder.
Get the cap friendly setup going on the Jfresh page.
Well, it'd be like just a special teams war builder, right? You would just have to have a little section where it's like special teams and you could set your power play and your penalty kill there and it could affect the total, I guess. So that leaves the Detroit Red Wings at a projected 2023-24 point total of 97, which is a substantial bump. And you're looking at it as all four lines of your forward group have a positive WAR, which is what you want, which is what Ryan would refer to as the Vegas effect, right, Ryan?
Yeah.
Where all your lines are balanced. You've got scoring throughout the lines. You've got guys you can shuffle around. You're deep. You're what you call a deep team. There may not be one guy who is super amazing, but you've got a few guys that contribute at a high level, like a DeBrincat, like a Larkin, what we assume Raymond will do. You've got your secondary guys in David Perron, JT Compher, Andrew Kopp. Maybe Michael Rasmussen bumps it up. Berggren should also take another step. But your guys who you consider bottom six, like right now, Robbie Fabry, a Daniel Sprong, a Klim Kostin, they're still either A, really good finishers, B, really good defensively, or C, can be slotted up into the top six and not affect your lineup. So it's having a deep team of a bunch of guys who are responsible or high offense talents. Defense, I can't even say like defense is much better than it was last season. I mean, it should be. I mean, on paper, it's much better than it was last season, and that's not even a question. So what are your thoughts on 97 points? Now, this again, is if everyone stays healthy and plays the entire season, it's 97 points.
I mean, I think it's feasible. It's best case scenario. But when you look at this team potentially being a team that can knock on the door to the playoffs, they've got to be there. So if they're not, then that's reason to be upset. And they're coming in at 80 to 90 roughly, and outside looking in again. We'll see. I think that that's a legit thing to look at. It's going to be interesting to see how things play out with Ottawa, who I know you have dropped in here, and what way that could, what way the cookie crumbles, if you will.
Oh, the Dreamers will be next.
Oh, but to me, it should be 90 point is the bar for Detroit this season. because that means they're competing into the final couple weeks of the season, which is by and large a huge improvement. Are they knocking the door down to get in? Probably not.
Because what, Florida got in with 94 last season? Is that what they hit? I believe it was 94. So if you're 97, then you're in the playoffs.
Florida got in with 92.
Okay, 92. That's even better. So if you even get close to that 97, so you get
Isles got in with 93.
Okay. Yeah. And I think the Wings, and again, I think we probably would have won a handful more games with a healthy Bertuzzi and Verana all season.
Mm-hmm.
So I think 97 with the depth, with the new additions, with what special teams is shaping up to look like, I don't think that's an insane point total. And I mean, what you hope to is land closer to 94, as close to 94 as possible is what I'm hoping to get to. So if you get to 97, I think you're on the right track. And I think, again, if everyone stays healthy, that might be doable. I mean, Robbie Fabry's knees are made out of plastic. So that's one thing you got to look out for. So we're going to move on to the Dreamers, who I call the Dreamers now because, man, they just, what they have is so awesome and amazing. And every line is just stellar. And they called themselves Vegas today. Someone said, like, we're exactly like Vegas. So we're going to take a look at the Ottawa Senators roster and what they project out to. So a top line, and they have a good top line now, especially with Tarasenko.
If healthy, this could be a very good line.
Sure. I mean, yes, to a point. So here's what I'm going to look at. Brady Tkachuk, Tim Stützle, Vladimir Tarasenko. And the problem I have with this line, it's got a projected WAR of 4.4 with an offense of 5. Fantastic. Its defense is a negative 1.9. Tarasenko, awful defensively. Stützle has been
most Russians in that sense, pretty much.
Stützle has been okay. And Tkachuk is okay, bad to okay defensively. So that's where they're really going to screw themselves on a top. If that's their top line, they're screwed on defense. They better net 1 million goals because they're going to let in quite a few.
You got to think that maybe Stützle will take a step on defensively. I mean, he has to really. I mean, if you're going to be top line center, you're going to have that responsibility.
But does Stützle make up for everything else? That's the question. Can he alone
defend that bad defensively?
Yeah, Ryan.
Yes, he was. Bad. Oh my God.
He has an EV defense of 1. So even a Tim Stützle by himself is not going to make up for the defensive shortcomings of Tarasenko and Tkachuk. That's why that top line
was 7.
Yeah, that's why that top line's defensive WAR is a negative 1.9. It's really bad.
Wow.
So
things I was not expecting.
No. A second line of Claude Giroux, Josh Norris, and Drake Batherson with a projected WAR of 6.4, offensive 4.9, defense of 0.5. A third line of Ridley Grieg, Shane Pinto, and Dominic Kubalik with a projected WAR of negative 0.2. That is a negative 0.3 on offense and a 0 on defense. And a fourth line of Matthew Joseph, Mark Kastelik, and Zach McEwen with a projected WAR of 0, an offense of 0.1, and a defense of negative 0.1. And I've been told that that's not going to be their fourth line, that it's going to include some guy I've never heard of from the SHL and a dude who's played in Belleville for 3 seasons. Great. Fantastic. Throw those guys in there. Your point total's the same. Defense of Thomas Chabot, Jakub Chikrin with a projected WAR of 1.6, offense 1.9, defense negative 0.4, because they're offensive defensemen. That's why. You're going to get a negative defensive WAR on that pairing. A second pair of Jake Sanderson and Artem Zub with a projected WAR of 0.1, offense of negative 0.6, defense of 0.9. Neither of them are super offensive. And a bottom pair of Eric Brandstrom and Travis Hamonic with a projected WAR of 0.5, offense 0.8, defense negative 0.3, for a defensive total WAR of 2.2. Oh, their offensive total WAR was 10.5. So again, not fantastic. And then you look at goaltending in Jonas Korpisalo, who gets you a projected WAR of 0.2, and Anton Forsberg, who gets you a 1.5. Corpy is who you got to really hope pulls through for you on that team. You got to hope you get just lights out Jonas Korpisalo, or you're going to have a really bad time. And
yeah,
it's not great.
I've always liked Corpy, especially when he's in Columbus, and he was just dealt a horrible hand with the team that was in front of him. I thought he would pop off in LA and stick there because of what they're building out, but I was surprised to see him actually leave. But I feel like it's a starting job for him to lose, unless they're just going to go they're going to ride the hot hand, which would almost make the most sense, I would think, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Korpisalo, he is 29 years old. Last season in LA, he played 11 games, had a 2.13 goals against and a 9.21 save. And in Columbus, he played 28 games, had a 3.13 goals against and a 9.13 save. So his numbers last season, I mean, even combined, were good. But if you look at the season before that in Columbus, he played 22, had a 4.15 goals against and an 8.77 save. The year before that, he had a 3.30 goals against and an 8.94 save. An 8.94 save. So you're hoping that he keeps riding that. He just keeps getting better. You hope that last season wasn't a fluke and that he can repeat that. But if he goes backwards, so do your points in the standing. I mean, right now, with their current lineup and the lines pulled right from Daily Faceoff, their projected points in the standings is 88. That's almost a full 10. That's 9 points less than the Red Wings are projected to get. And I think that is probably a little low because if you get a full year of Josh Norris, and his stats last year aren't going to be fantastic because he didn't play a ton. And you hope you get good Dominic Kubalik, and you hope Tarasenko plays all season. It seems like there's a lot of hope. Same with Chychrun. You hope Chychrun plays all season.
I mean, that's the hope that we had with. I mean, if they get a full season of Kubalik and that one that was streaky like we dealt with, then it's possible he could win them some games. If they get a healthy Tarasenko, he can win them some games. But that's the same if that we're going to play with Detroit. Are we going to have a healthy Larkin? You got to think so. But I mean, when it comes down to it, is he going to be playing through injury, or is he going to be actually healthy for a full season? Are we going to have depth guys be healthy? Raz, Fabry, so on and so forth. Like, it's the big if on every single team. It's not going to happen. If it does, it's great. But the point I was going to make earlier is when you look at that top line, Stützle was 41.5% in the faceoff draw last year.
Yeah.
202 for 284. And Tkachuk was 370 to 395 at 48.4. So
what was
do you have to change that lineup? What's that?
What was Did Batherson or Giroux take draws?
Batherson took a total of 38. Giroux took a lot, and he had a 58% draw. He had 712 wins and 509 losses. So maybe do you split up? Do you put Tkachuk put Giroux between Tkachuk and Stützle?
I think what they were talking about doing was sliding Tkachuk down a line and to wing on the second line and moving Giroux up, because Giroux's got to take faceoffs on that top line because your other guys suck at taking faceoffs.
Well, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, are you putting, because Stützle averaged 21-16 a night ice time last year. Their next highest wing was DeBrincat at 19, followed by Giroux at 18.48 and Tkachuk at 18.38. So,
yeah, they're going to have to do some shuffling, but even doing shuffling there, you're taking, I mean, that might actually help them too to move Giroux up to that top line. Just swap Giroux and Tkachuk, because again, Tkachuk is horrible defensively, and you might make up some ground there by letting Giroux take the draws and moving Tkachuk down, because you add some defense to that top line with Giroux too, but it still doesn't move you up.
And that's not
a whole
bad
10
thing
points
for your top six. You're not. That's good, right?
Yeah, that's flexibility. But what they don't have is that bottom six flexibility. Like, their depth, they don't have depth. Like, Dominic Kubalik was picked up hopefully to give them some depth. But there are
you gotta think that he's gonna float through their lineup, right? Like he did with Detroit.
Maybe, but there are people projecting him to be a top line winger on that team. And that's not, if Dominic Kubalik is your top line winger, your team has some issues. Like, that's a big problem.
He did well in bursts in Detroit. I think that he'll do the same with the top six there in Ottawa. But if he's slotting on your third line, that's your best case scenario.
Yeah, and to the people who are like, he's an elite goal scorer and finisher, I mean, he's not elite.
Yeah.
And he does not drive play. He does not create for himself. The opportunities need to be placed in front of him on a silver platter for it to happen. He's not going to dangle around two guys and make a smart shot. No, he's going to blast it and hope it goes in. And it will go in sometimes. But if you're banking on him to be a top line guy for you, you're projected at 88 points. And even if you make that Kachuk for Giroux swap, it doesn't get you up 10 points.
So, does it bump him up at all?
A little bit. I think it might take him up by 1 or 2, but it's not 10. So again, I think that in the Sens fans, there are a lot. Thank you to the Sens-Tennial podcast who had me on. And they were a bunch of guys. They're guys that get it and they understand what's going on and they know their team still has problems. And they were very nice. And it was a great conversation.
So it wasn't like what we've dealt with on Twitter?
No, because they even acknowledge the people on Twitter is absolutely insane. So Sens fans, please stop turning into Toronto fans. Just don't do it.
So here's the question. Like with Kubalik, last year in Detroit, he shot 11.5%. The year before that, 9.3. Before that, a 10.9. His rookie season, he shot at a 19% pace.
Which is not sustainable, really.
No, that was his 30-goal season. I mean, last year, shooting 11%, he still had 20 goals. So, I mean, your expectations got to be that, right? Hopefully that he gets to 12 to 13% and 20, 25 goals. Is that to me, I think that's a win if you're Ottawa.
If he gets 20 goals, that's a win for Ottawa. I think they're expecting him to basically replicate what DeBrincat did. And it's hard to say if he will or not, because you need to see who's
never wanted to
with.
be there from the get-go,
no.
So hopefully he at least replicates 20.
Yeah, that would be the hope, I would say. So we're going to do one more before we take a break. And do you want to do another happy one or a maximum sadness?
I don't know which ones you'd be referring to, because I'm assuming this. Let's do the sadness, if that's what I think you're going to do.
Maximum sadness. So with the departure of Patrice Bergeron and David Krejci, the Boston Bruins were thought, man, this might be the year where they start to slide, because they lost two of the guys who were carrying them along, helping them out a lot. Not carrying them as in putting the team on their back, but like Bergeron's was still one of the best defensive centers in the entire league, if not the best defensive center in the entire league. Krejci was helping them quite a bit. But I'm going to run through their roster and we can all just get sad together. So a top line of James Van Riemsdyk, Pavel Zacha, and David Pastrnak.
Is this still based off Daily Faceoff?
Yes. Yeah, I pulled these today. Pulled them. Projected WAR of 6.6 with an offense of 6.4 and a defense of 0. Brad Marchand, Charlie Coyle, and Jake DeBrusk. A projected WAR of 4.6, offense of 4.2, a defense of -0.1. A third line of Jacob Lacko, Morgan Geekie, and Trent Frederick. A projected WAR of 1.8 with an offense of 1.7 and a defense of 0.1. A fourth line of Milan Lucic, Jesper Boquist, and AJ Greer with a projected WAR of 0.2, offense 0.2, defense -0.1 for a forward WAR of 13.2. Pasta is doing a ton of lift to this WAR. That is what he is doing there. I mean, if you take Pasta out and literally replace him with anyone else, they drop like a full 5 points. So
really,
yeah, it's not even close. So their defensive pairing of Matt Grzelcyk and Charlie McAvoy with projected WAR of 2.5, Hampus Lindholm and Brandon Carlo with a projected WAR of 1.9, and Derek Forbort and Kevin Shattenkirk with a -0.6. Signing Shattenkirk was very
confusing,
mystifying to me. I'm like, Kevin Shattenkirk, and they went and signed like Lucic too, and he's older as well. But their defensive WAR is a 3.7. Then you have Ullmark and Swayman, who just bumped them up even more with a 2.3 and a 1.3 for a projected standings points of 105. And I look at that and I go, well, I guess that's 25 less points than they had last season, so they'll at least lose some more games. But I'm like, it's sad. It's really sad to me that we're going to have to deal with the Bruins again, possibly do not the same thing they did last year, but still win the division.
I mean, you're literally going to have to bank on Ullmark and Swayman having repeat seasons. Both
which I don't think
above
is reasonable.
92 save percentage. Both sub 2-3 goals against, with Ullmark was a sub 1-9 at a 1.89. So, I mean, maybe it's going to be their defense. Is that what keeps them afloat? If, again, the giant IF, they're healthy, which the guys that they've got right now, I think, have been pretty consistent in terms of that. So maybe they'll be okay. Shattenkirk would be the question mark, maybe. Wasn't McAvoy hurt last year, though, too?
Yeah, and you hope that Marchand, and he seemed fine last year, that his hips hold out, because he, again, also had like double hip surgery. So I just don't think I can do another year of the Bruins fans just shoving in everyone's face that they're amazing and they don't have to rebuild and all that.
Well, hey, maybe they finish in the top 6 or whatever again, and that makes it easy to get rid of that draft pick in the trade.
If it lands inside, yeah. So that's the conditional for the DeBrincat trade.
Yeah, sorry, that's what I'm referring to.
Yeah, so if they still make the playoffs in a high position, I think you absolutely send that pick to Ottawa and you say, here's pick number, 28 or whatever. Yeah. So I think that, that would make your decision a lot easier there. You look at it, and someone asked for it earlier, like what the projection is, a Boston fan, and I sent it to them, and they go, man, if we even get 100 points, I will be so happy, because they look at their team and they go, losing the people they lost. So losing,
Foligno, Taylor Hall.
I'm sorry. Oh, I thought you said Veleno. You said Foligno.
Oh, sorry. No, yeah, Nick Foligno. Which, I mean, Foligno, you can debate if that was impactful, but Taylor Hall and Bertuzzi, yes.
Yeah, absolutely impactful.
Bert wasn't there for a full season, but he led the team, and they're tied with the lead of team in points. He had 10 points in 7 games, tied with Marchand.
Yeah. And then losing 2 of their like veteran leaders. I mean,
Orlov's gone off the back end.
It's going to be tough, I think, still. I think this, if any projection, if any projection I think is going to be wildly inaccurate, I think it's going to be this one. And I think it's going to not be plus points, so they're not going to get 130 again. But I think it's going to be minus.
Nuts at the Athletic posted one yet?
I haven't looked in my Athletic.
He probably won't do anything until it's closer to the season.
My Athletic subscription lapsed. So
yeah, so did mine, unfortunately.
So I look at it and I say, I think the Bruins could get as low as 90, as high as maybe this 105. And that's what worries me about. It's a team. Bruins, I think, are going to be the team to watch the closest this season, just to see, because they had such a historic season last year, to see what they do this year, because it could be a historic difference in seasons as well. So that'll be an interesting one to keep an eye on. But we're going to take a quick break for word from DraftKings and from Raycon before we come back to finish out the rest of the division in Tampa, Toronto, Montreal, and the Buffalo Sabres. We'll be right back in just a minute. New customers, download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code THPN. Bet just $5 to score $150 in bonus bets instantly. That's code THPN, only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In Massachusetts, call 800-327-5050 or visit gamblinghelplinema.org. In New York, call 877-HOPENY or text HOPENY. In Kansas, call 1-800-522-4700. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas, in West Virginia, gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. All games regulated by West Virginia Lottery. Please play responsibly in partnership with Hollywood Casino at Charlestown Races. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. 21 plus in most eligible states, but age varies by jurisdiction. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details and state-specific responsible gambling resources. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. 1 boost per eligible game. Opt-in required. Max bet $50. 10 plus legal required for 100% boost. Eligibility, wagering, and deposit restrictions apply. Even if you're not going on vacation, summer's all about a vacation state of mind. Whether I want to listen to my Spotify playlists on repeat or just need to retreat inside my own head for a bit, I love creating my own summer soundtrack by popping in my Raycon wireless earbuds. There's so much going on all summer. Sometimes you need some upbeat music to pump you up before you see people, or to stay calm with some guided meditation. Right now, I'm just listening to podcasts on my walks downtown when I get lunch at work, and it's really helping me keep my composure to get to that giant list of emails. Let me tell you right now, Raycons are the best way to listen. Use earbud tap functions to toggle between 3 customizable sound profiles, noise isolation, and awareness mode. Raycons have a 32-hour battery life, including 8 hours of playtime, so you can listen to what you want, when you want, for a really long time. They come with custom gel tips for the most comfortable in-ear fit and start at half the price of other premium audio brands, but they sound just as good. And Raycons come with a 30-day happiness guarantee, so you can't really lose. Create your own soundtrack with Raycon right now. Grindline podcast listeners can get 15% off their Raycon order at buyraycon.com/THPN. That's buyraycon.com/THPN to save 15% on Raycons. buyraycon.com/THPN. And we're back. And after being depressed by the Boston Bruins, we are going to go to a happy place. And just, I don't know, can we call them a hockey team anymore? Like, they're relegated.
I'm okay not, because it makes my cousin sad and it's wonderful.
It just relegate them to the AHL. I wish the NHL had a relegation, because the Montreal Canadiens would absolutely be relegated to the AHL, and their roster's just so bad. So I'm going to run through this one decently fast to get to their standings points, because every line is bad. You've got Cole Caulfield, Nick Suzuki, and Kirby Dach as your top line. And if that tells you anything, it's that your team is absolutely missing the playoffs. They have a projected WAR of 2.8. Now, their offense is good at a 3.1, but their defense is a -1.
What was Dach playing in Chicago? Wasn't he depth guy?
Third line, maybe? The second or third, maybe? But Chicago was also terrible. So that doesn't mean anything.
That's where I was getting.
Doesn't mean anything. A second line of Mike Hoffman, Christian Dvorak, and Josh Anderson for a projected WAR of 0.5, offensive 1.9, defensive -1.3. A third line of newly signed Alex Newhook, Jake Evans, and Brendan Gallagher for a WAR of 1, offensive 0.3, defensive 0.4. Left wing, Juraj Slavkovsky, center Sean Monahan, and right wing Yoel Armia make up the fourth line with a projected WAR of 0.7. -0.7 with an offense of a -0.5 and a defense of a -0.2. Your defensive pairings are Mike Matheson and Savard with a WAR of 0.5, Jordan Harris and Caden Gooley with a WAR of 0.5, Arbor Xhekaj and Jonathan Kovacevic with a WAR of 0.3 for a defensive WAR of 1.3, forward WAR of 3.6. Jake Allen gets you a 1.5. Sam Montembeault gets you a 0.6 with a projected points total of 72. And that's real bad, Ryan. 72 is far and away not good. That is my outlook for the just ultimately sad Montreal Canadiens.
I mean, you gotta
and they're toward the cap, which is also hilarious.
Yeah. Fuck, I'm trying to think of like ways to spin this positively. Like, does Slavkovsky have his breakout year being that first overall
projected
pick?
On the fourth line having a breakout year?
I'm trying to make it happy for Habs fans, which I don't really want it to be, but you got to hope that at least for a kid like that who is fun to watch play hockey, don't get me wrong, like maybe he does more than 10 points in 39 games, because wasn't he hurt last year?
Yeah, and I want to see how you, and I can see it, it's right in front of my face, but a team that bad, like I read you off half the names and you go, who is that?
Yeah.
Has to use LTIR money to get under the cap. If they didn't have any LTIR, they would be over $4 million over the cap. That is ridiculous.
Oh, Rice.
Well, yeah, Carey Price is still listed as LTIR. But so they've got $6 million of wiggle room with LTIR space. But like, how is your team that bad, but people are paid that much money? Like Nick Suzuki, $7.875 million. Brendan Gallagher, 6.5. Josh Anderson, 5.5. Matheson 4.8. Caulfield's injured 7.85. So, I mean, it's the team's bad. They're going to flounder again and be at the bottom of the league unless they all activate some superpowers at the same time. It's just, it's, I said we do a happy one. This one's happy to me.
Newhook will be a fun one to watch, I think. Coming in, like, I think that was the way they were able to bring him in and give him, I don't want to call it a fresh start, but a clean slate to really try to set one off for them. I don't know. Gallagher makes too much money. Josh Anderson is a dick. Mike Hoffman can only shoot. I'm looking through Cap Friendly and just like trying to justify their existence, and it's very difficult. Kirby Dach, I mean, he's still 22 years old.
Yeah.
On a very nice contract for the next 3 seasons. If you've got him, a Newhook, a Slavkovsky, those guys hitting it off this year, if you get Harvey Pinard to continue the streak that he went on when he got called up late in the season last year, there's potential for them to be competitive. Will they be good is a different question.
I think that's their saving grace is the guys that they have are young. Like Newhook is 21. Right now, he's got an EV offensive 19 and EV defensive 4. Okay, so then Jfresh is behind, but he's got an EV offensive 19 and EV defensive 44. So the only thing saving is his finishing's over 50%. His goals per 60 is over 50, and his A1s per 60 is over 50. But you hope that he develops and gets better. You hope that Cole Caulfield takes another step and gets better. It's you're banking on young guys to do well, but I think they know they're not a playoff team. They know they're not even going to be close. But it's just they need to shed some money real quick here.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting to watch. I'll put it that way. And I'm just going to laugh at my cousin, but it's going to watch it end up being one of those years where, like, when the Habs were good and they made it to the Cup final, granted it was a shit show of a season for them to get there. And Detroit, is that the year that Detroit swept them?
Yeah, I think so.
I think it was. Watch that happen this year, but reversed. That'd be our fucking luck.
We're going to move on to another team that we love to hate. The Toronto Maple Leafs and all of their fans who can't shut up online. They have and this is, I like this one. I actually like this projection because this is how you build a roster versus not build a roster. So the Maple Leafs, top line of Tyler Bertuzzi, Austin Matthews, and Mitch Marner with a projected WAR of 9.7, an offensive 9, a defensive -0.1. Just to let you know, that line is carrying your entire team, the whole thing. Your second line is Max Domi, John Tavares, William Nylander with a projected WAR of 2.1, a 4 offense and a -1.8 defense. Bad defensive line. Third line of Matthew Nye is David Compher and Calle Jarnkrok with a projected WAR of 0.9, offensive 0.3, defensive 0.2. A fourth line of Sam Lafferty, Dylan Gambrell, and Ryan Reeves. Ryan Reeves, your team signed Ryan Reeves. A projected WAR of -2.4, an offensive -1.9, and a defensive -0.3 for a forward WAR of 10.3.
Can you help explain to me?
No.
How Ryan Reeves on this team is impactful?
It's
because
not.
If you're expecting him to go stand up for your star players, does that mean you're going to be playing him alongside Matthews and Marner?
No, they just hope he jumps on the ice to punch people. But again, he's going to take dumb penalties. And you have a projected PK of 0.7.
I mean, I feel like he's one that actually is smarter with his penalties as a whole and his hits. Or he just doesn't get called for them. I'm not really sure.
I don't know.
Let's see. How many penalty minutes did he have last year? He didn't have a lot of penalties last season.
So he does nothing? Literally
43
nothing.
Penalty minutes in 73 games.
So he literally does nothing.
Hold on. Let me go to NHL.com to see how many of those are majors.
So like 8 fights. So if you look at the Toronto Maple Leafs forward WAR of 10.3, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 teams better than you in the division for a forward WAR. That is the Tampa Bay Lightning, the Boston Bruins, the Ottawa fucking Senators, and the Red Wings. have a better forward WAR than the entirety of the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Really?
Yeah,
That's not
10.3.
good.
So their defense, top pair Morgan Riley, TJ Brody with a WAR of 1.5. Jake McCabe, John Klingberg with a 0.7, a bad defensive second pair. And a third pair of Giordano and Timothy Liljegren with a 2.2 for a defensive WAR of 4.4. Samsonov and Wool are not helping your case. That's actually also one of the weaker pairs. That actually might be the weakest pair for goalies behind maybe Buffalo because Devin Levi is not in the system. So projected standing points for the Toronto Maple Leafs of 100. 100 points. That
Which
would be
if they
3 points above the Red Wings.
An 11-point drop from last season because they finished at 111. So Reeves, going back to him, he had 7 major penalties, so 7 fights, it would appear, and only 4 minors.
Okay. So that's going to help you.
But he also averaged 9 minutes and 19 seconds a game. So, but he was averaging his penalties taken per 60.26.
So do they want him to fight more? Is that what they want?
Apparently.
They want to take more penalties?
Sounds like he drew more penalties than he took last season because probably he laid a hit on somebody, didn't get called for it, and then someone reacted to it.
Yeah, I just don't know how throwing that on your fourth line to just have a line that seems, if this is the line, like it's literally going to get caved every night.
I mean, 6% of his time on ice was penalty minutes.
I'm going to say if you put a fourth line of Christian Fischer, Robbie Fabry, and Jonathan Berggren against Sam Lafferty, Dylan Gambrell, and Ryan Reeves, who's going to win that matchup?
Depends on the hits, but you would think Detroit's.
Yeah, because literally, like, you signed...
I mean, really, that line would give fits to a lot of, like, middle six and some top lines.
You signed a plug, literally the biggest plug in the entire league, and you want to be like the center of the hockey universe and say you're so amazing and all of that. Like, grow up. It's not going to happen. Now, again, could be low. They could go to 105. They could drop to 95. I'm going to give it a 5-point buffer. And it's even then, though,
they're dropping to 95. I think they're out of the playoffs.
Even if you give the Red Wings a 5-point buffer, they could come out ahead of Toronto. Like, Toronto, if they don't get their shit together, they're going to have a real bad time really quick. Because next season, they're going to have to
out of a job.
They're going to have to give Matthews, $14 million? They're going to try and keep Nylander. They still got Tavares. They're going to try and sign Bertuzzi.
It's going to be an impressive feat for a team that is currently still $2 million over the cap with LTIR in place.
So I don't know what they're going to do. So we had 2 more teams left. Okay. We're going to move to the Tampa Bay Lightning, who actually still projects decent, but there's a twist. So Steven Stamkos, Braden Point, Nikita Kucherov make up their top line at a 6.8 with an offensive 7.2 and a defensive -1.2. Bad defensive line. The second line of Brandon Hagel, Anthony Cirelli, Connor Sheary, projected WAR 4.2, offense 3.2, and a defense of 0. A third line of Mikey Eyssimont, Nicholas Paul, Tanner Jeannot, -0.2 projected WAR with a -0.3 offense and a 0.4 defense. And a fourth line of Cole Koepke, Luke Glendening, and Josh Archibald with a -0.4.
I forgot LGD went there.
Yeah, with an offensive -0.1 and a defense of 0.3. So their top 2 lines are mid to bad defensively, and their bottom 2 lines are mid to bad offensively, but they equal each other out, I guess, with a forward WAR of 10.5.
I mean,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go.
I was going to say offensively, that top line is amazing.
It's carrying the team mostly.
And I forgot about Sheary and I forgot about Glendening, but I like that second line of Cirelli, Sheary, and Hagel. Sheary's got a bit of a bite to him. Cirelli can do it all. Hagel, debatable. You would like to think, I would assume, as a Tampa fan, that Jeannot is not on your third line and is on that second line, but especially for what you paid to get him. I don't know. In a way, it's balanced because you have top two scoring lines, top two defensive lines, and you just go at it. You hope that third line should be pretty solid with Nick Paul, Jeannot, and Esimont, however you say it.
Isamont, yeah. Where they get kind of screwed is their defense. So their top defensive pair, Victor Hedman,
which has been their bread and butter for years.
But top defensive pair is Victor Hedman and Nick Perbix, with a projected WAR of 0.6, offense of 0.9, defense of negative 0.6. A second pair of Mikhail Sergachev and Eric Chernak, with a projected WAR of 1.7, offense of 0.9, defense of 0.6. Their second defensive pairing is better than their first defensive pairing, projected-wise. Third pairing of Calvin DeHaan and Zach Bogosian with a negative 0.4 projected WAR, a 0 offense, and a negative 0.2 defense for a defensive WAR of 2. Vasi's a god. Jonas Johansson, I don't even know who that is. His projected WAR is a negative 0.2. But Vasi makes up for it with a 2.2 for a projected standings points of behind the Red Wings with 94.
This is that Johansson's literal first year in North America.
So, I mean, are we going to see, and this brings up the question, are we going to see the decline of the Tampa Bay Lightning?
I hate this game because I'm making you play it. We were with Boston.
I don't care. I'm making you play this game.
I want to say yes, demise has begun, but it's only because you look at those 4 lines before you look at the 4 lines of Tampa and you're like, fuck, any of them are going to hurt me. Now you look at these 4 lines and you can argue 2, maybe 2.5, and the rest are like, okay. Now defensively, they might hurt you. They're going to be that bottom 6 could very well be amazing for shutdown. And if that's what you're going to bank on, have at it. Because all you got to do is put Stamkos, Point, Kucherov out there, and boom, you're in a good spot.
To me, looking at it and to see the Tampa Bay Lightning projected behind the Red Wings was a bit jarring. I think that's kind of what did it for me as I looked at it and I go, that's kind of interesting. So I don't know what to do with it. It's kind of like a Ricky Bobby moment. I don't know what to do with my hands, because even if you give it a 5 plus or minus buffer, that would get them to 99 or as low as 89. So it could be the downfall of the Tampa Bay Lightning. And that is, it'll be interesting to see, because again, it's like the house Stevie built is slowly falling apart without him there.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like, if they do get in, maybe it ends up being the wild card and they can rebound for a year and just survive through the tight cap to make something happen next season. Because when you look at them on Cap Friendly, they've got a lot on their defense to make up for. And cap hit wise, they're going to be roughly at 76 million. So if the cap goes up as is expected, they're only working with a little over roughly $11 million in cap space, which is going to help them tremendously. But does it give you, and what's nice for them too, is they lose $250,000 in a buried penalty. They lose the retained $200,000 from Maroon, and Brent Seabrook's $6.875 million comes off their LTIR. So offensively, they're set. They've got to figure out what to do with Stamkos, though. You got to hope, right, that he's going to take a pay cut. If so, then you're in a good spot. Brandon Hagel's making 1.5. You got to think that might actually go up. If Stamkos maybe drops, then you've got something to work with. But I'm not really sure where they go from here.
Yeah, again, another team to watch. So you're going to start watching teams like Boston and teams like Tampa and teams like Toronto and see if they start to slide a little bit. Toronto mostly for money reasons, but the other ones because they're getting older and guys are leaving or guys are retiring and their pipeline sucks because they've been good and they haven't been able to refill it.
And hopefully they suck, because that means the home opener will be fun because Detroit will win.
Yeah, let's hope for a win. We're going to look at the team I almost forgot in the Florida Panthers. So we're going to look at the top line, and this one we'll do pretty quickly because it's a high point total. A top line.
This is a balanced team.
Evan Rodriguez, Alexander Barkov, and Sam Reinhart for projected WAR of 6.1. Carter Verhaeghe, Sam Bennett, Matthew Tkachuk for 7.4. Eetu Luostarinen, Anton Lundell, and Gregory Denisenko for 2.2. Ryan Lomberg, Steven Lorentz, and Nick Cousins for a 0.9 with a forward WAR of 16.7. That is a dominant forward group. Absolutely dominant. D pairs Gustav Forsling and Josh Mahura for a WAR of 0.5. OEL for some reason and Dmitry Kulikov for a negative 0.5. So that just offsets your top pair. And Nico Mikkola and Mike Riley for a 0.3 for a defensive WAR of 0.4. Bob still projects at a 1.2. Stolarz at a 0.8 for a goalie WAR of 1.9 for a projected standing points of 1.04. And this hinges on you just offensively demolishing every team you go up against because your defense is super weak. It is the weakest defense in the entire division. And you got to hope that Tkachuk stays healthy all season and your other high scorers like Verhaeghe stay healthy all season, or else your team will fall apart.
Yeah. I mean, we saw it in the playoffs. Their offense carried them to no end over Toronto. But because they were able to maintain such good pressure and not have to, like when they had to hold on to the lead late, Toronto, that's where they shined because like this defense has changed a bit from last season. Yeah. Hopefully they're better. You got to hope as a fan and their staff, but they held on thanks to Bob. Goaltending, I think, is what literally saved them in the playoffs, at least to getting through Toronto. Well, really the whole playoffs, but Toronto in particular, because that was just the upset of the century, if you want to call it that. So if they're going to be anything, if they're scoring goals, you can't really be too upset about it. Just make sure you score more than the other team. Weird how that works out, right? Hockey, crazy.
Yeah. But I mean, and again, though, it hinges on staying healthy. And if you don't stay healthy, your team is going to get caved and it is not going to be fun. And the last projection of the night is someone who we are constantly now compared to, who they say were farther ahead in the rebuild than us. And looking at their roster, I think it's weighed down by a few players. So Buffalo Sabres top line of Jeff Skinner, Tage Thompson, and Alex Tuch with a projected WAR of 6, an offense of 6.6, but a terrible defense of negative 1.5. Second line of JJ Peterka, Dylan Cousins, Casey Middlestat with a projected WAR of 1.8, an offense of 2.3, a defense of negative 0.8. A third line of Jordan Greenway, Peyton Krebs, and Victor Olofsson with a projected WAR of negative 1.3, a negative 0.6 offense, and negative 0.5 defense. A fourth line of Zemgus Girgensons, Tyson Jost, and Kyle Okposo, who apparently still plays hockey, with a projected WAR of 0.8, offense of negative 0.4, defense of 0.8, for a forward WAR of 7.2, which I believe 7.2 is only above the Montreal Canadiens. Not good. So their forward group is literally being carried by Tage Thompson and Dylan Cousins and sometimes Alex Tuch. That's basically what it's going to be.
Well, you got to think Jeff Skinner is going to be helping out that a little bit.
How old is Jeff Skinner now?
31.
Okay, so he's reaching...
He just turned 31 back in May.
He's reaching the could his game start going down age.
I still like this offensive group. Thompson popping off last year was fantastic. I've always loved Dylan Cousins. Alex Tuch has always, I think, been a force, if you will. I guess that's one way to put it. I loved watching him in Vegas, the way he was able to just come in from after the expansion and dominate. Then he got, isn't he he's hometown boy in Buffalo, right? The eyes said it all with that question. Alex Tuch is from Syracuse, New York. Yep. Close enough, I think. I don't know. I think they're a fun team to watch. I like JJ Peterka, Peyton Krebs. Like they've got some young players that are there's skill there. And the fact they picked up Jordan Greenway, which can turn into hopefully a reclamation project, because I remember watching him coming into Minnesota from the USA team. And that was a player that I was hoping Detroit would have landed at the time. In hindsight, I'm kind of glad that they didn't. But if he can have a resurgence on this young roster, they could be good. 81 points possible. 80 to 90, I think, is a fair range for this team.
I haven't even gotten to the projected points, Ryan.
Sorry, I got ahead of
I'm
myself.
on defense.
Yeah, I jumped in. Whatever. It's the last one.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're going to depend a lot on the younger guys too to develop and to take them to that next level, because they're trying to bring prospects and they're trying to bring younger guys in and have them just move forward like any team is going to. But for them, it might be a little harder because their forward group as a whole is pretty bad defensively. But their defense, if you look at it, top pair of Matthias Samuelsson, Rasmus Dahlin for a projected WAR of 1.7, Owen Power and Connor Clifton at a 1.5, Henry Yokiharu and Eric Johnson at a negative 0.3 for a defensive WAR of 2.9. So their defense is actually better than about half of the division. So that is where they're going to kind of make up some ground, is they won't be scored on as much. And if their offense can click, then they don't have to worry about it too much. For their goaltending, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen is a 0.2, and Devin Levi's not even in the system. And I think this is Buffalo's thing, is that if Devin Levi can't be a starter, like if he comes in and is just, and he hasn't yet, if he comes in and he just falls flat or has a bad first year, that could be a disaster for the Buffalo Sabres.
What do they show with Eric Comrie as in goal? Because right now, Luukkonen and Comrie are on cap friendly as their starters.
Is Comrie still there?
Yeah, he's 28 years old, signed for this year at 1.8 mil.
Let me see if I put Comrie in. Yeah, that makes it as bad as not putting anyone in. It's literally it does not change their total points. It brings their goalie WAR to a 0.7, which
shows up.
Yeah, okay. But it doesn't change their points their point total, their standings total, because right now Eric Comrie's projected WAR is a 0.5, which is better than a non-system Devin Levi at 0. But it's not good enough to win you more games. So the Buffalo Sabres have a projected standings points of 81. And I think it's that purely because of the defensive shortcomings of their forwards that's really going to bite them in the ass if their goalies fall flat.
I could see it. I mean, they've got two of the top young defensemen in hockey right now with Dahlin and Power. So, and really, you look at Yokiharu, he's serviceable. Eric Johnson, he's your old crusty vet of the group. That'll actually probably be huge, I think, for Dahlin and Power to be with Eric Johnson. I think that was a sneaky good pickup for a 1-year deal. But they're going to be kind of like a Florida, where if they're not outscoring you, hold on. And if they're not getting depth help, then they're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, and I think that's why they buffed that defense so much, or they're going to rely on it, is what's going to happen. They're going to rely on that defense to overcome the forwards' defensive shortcomings.
I mean, they had 6 guys that scored over 50 points last season, though.
Yeah, and you hope they can do it again.
But, I mean, finishing with 91 points. So,
yeah, to drop 10 might be a bit dramatic, but again, if you give it a 5-point leeway in either direction, if you say they go to an 86, they're dropping a few because their goalie situation is in flux, because their forward group lacks defense. You get another year of Kyle Okposo and Zemgus Girgensons, who are not getting younger.
I mean, they've got their top 10 scorers all returned this season.
And that's fine. And if they do very well, great. They do very well. But I'm just giving you what the numbers put in is what the numbers put out, and it's what the players have done. So we're gonna end with this tonight. The standings based on the roster WAR projections.
The Wasters.
The standings based on the roster WAR projections would be Boston, Florida, Toronto, Detroit, Tampa, Ottawa, Buffalo, Montreal.
You have to do a side by side of the rest of the divisions to see, or at least the other Atlantic or the Metro division, to see where Detroit would fall if they're actually, based on projections, a wild card team or not.
I would think 4th in the Atlantic, which is generally the strongest division should get you a wild card spot.
Well, fourth in the Atlantic last year was Florida with 92
Yeah.
points, and that got them in.
Yeah.
And honestly, I'm not slouching on the Metro because you're talking about Carolina, New Jersey, New York, all had over 107 points last year.
Yeah. I think that it should be tighter than it was last year for our division. I don't think it's going to be 3 runaways and then everyone else drops off. But
well, I think last year was definitely tighter. I mean, other than Boston, just Boston and Toronto were the only 200+ point teams in the Atlantic. Then you had Tampa at 98, Florida 92, Buffalo 91, and then Ottawa, Detroit, Montreal.
I mean, a 98 to 92 is a pretty decent gap still.
Oh, yeah.
I think, though, that and to wrap it up, we're positioned to have a really good team. That's what it is.
Good.
And it's
a
not just
like a more competitive team than what we're used to seeing.
And it's not just flashy names, because you look at what the teams with flashy names are doing, they're losing games. They're not making it past the second round of the playoffs. I'm surprised Toronto didn't raise a banner for making it out of the first round. But I think we're putting ourselves in a position, Yzerman, like we had mentioned, the past 5 episodes, has built a deeper team that can be more competitive with people who have won before, with guys who are younger, who are coming off great years that they think can keep going. I think we're in a position to, I don't think 4th in the division is unattainable. I don't think it's unattainable. Do I think it's like a stretch goal? Absolutely. Would I be happy with 5th in the division? Yes. And I think 5th, 100% is attainable. Absolutely. So, Ryan, I want to get your final thoughts before we sign off tonight, because I like where this puts us.
I'm just going to continue your point, I think, a little bit, because if you're talking about 5th in the division for where Detroit's been the last 6-7 years, huge, because the likelihood of the teams you're behind is going to be Florida, Tampa, Toronto, Boston. That means you're jumping Buffalo and Ottawa, which they're not bad teams. Like, the way that things have shaken out with the salary cap, there's a lot of balance amongst each division now. You could argue that maybe in the West in comparison, but the Atlantic and Metro divisions are tough. Okay, don't count Montreal and Columbus, but I digress. So if you can be knocking on the door with Florida, because like I said, 92 points got them in the playoffs. If you're Detroit, if you're looking at 90 to 95 points this season, you're right there. Buffalo just missed at 91 points. It's doable. It literally came down to an overtime loss that put Florida ahead in points.
Yep.
So I don't know. There's a lot to look forward to. The way this is projecting out, I think, feels better than what we were looking at last year. I was trying to find last year's, but I couldn't find it. And I think our best case scenario was like 95 to 100 again. Something like that last season. No, it was 90. You remember what it was?
No, I don't remember.
Anyways, if we're hitting 90 points, I consider this season a win. If that means that we're also a wild card team, let's go. Because you know what? I've got a half season ticket plan, and that puts me front of the line to get some tickets.
Amazing.
But on that note, and speaking of tickets, they did just go, the pre-sale started today, and I think they officially go on sale as of Friday, correct?
Yeah, whatever's left.
At 10 a.m. So, and pretty much everything's already sold out. It's all resale at this point. But anyways, already around 33.
Nice. And you can follow me online at Bringing the Wing. You can follow the Grindline Podcast online at Grindline Pod. Again, if you haven't subbed to our YouTube, all the charts will be there during this episode. You'll be able to look at all of what we are looking at and judge for yourself. Yeah, it's really cool. I like the new layout that I made. So we also like to give a shout out to the Hockey Podcast Network at HockeyPodNet on Twitter for hosting us and spreading our podcast around. Also to Vintage Detroit, which is the only place you should get your Detroit jerseys from and worked on. If you use the promo code Grindline on Bring Hockey Back, you'll get 12%. If you use that same promo code on Howie's Hockey Tape, you'll get 10%. You can check out our merch at redbubble.com by searching the Grindline. And our website, grindlinepodcast.com, is all updated and everything with the new roster. So you can check out stuff there too as well. But that is going to do it for us tonight. So for Ryan, I am Greg. You stay classy, Hockey Town.